Hello, and I'm back with another RiftGuides WildRift video, and today we're going to talk about the best picks for climbing or easy autofill picks. Those champions have high impact regardless of what you're doing, and they're super easy to pilot, and there's just little you have to know about them. So, let's start, but before we hop into it, let's go to our question of the day. What are the most common mistakes to avoid in WildRift? For example, in this instance, let's say you're climbing and you're autofilled to the jungle role, and you're thinking, what champion could I play? I've seen all those Lee Sin players play Lee Sin all the time, so I'll do the same, and then you're just going 0-7. Turns out, a champion that requires certain technique and only is viable in certain situations, depending on your skill level against the enemy skill level, isn't that easy to pilot as an autofill champion. So what about just taking an easier champion? And I'll just suggest a Mumu here. A Mumu is very easy to pilot and will always have value in a chaotic solo queue environment. You're a teamfight champion, and in solo queue, especially if you're climbing, a lot of things will be decided by random teamfights. And what else could you possibly want than a little rolling toilet paper that stuns everyone around them and cries them to death? Sounds great, right? But we'll get to that later on. And now, let's move over to our first pick on this list, Misfortune. Misfortune is an easy to play champion that has a great laning phase. Her laning phase is very poke heavy, and her first ability is very difficult to dodge if you don't understand how it functions. It all depends on the angles, and if people don't pay proper attention to the angles or have devices that don't allow them to see so much, then you'll have a field day in your dragon lane. But not only that, she has an easy way of proccing the enemy's bone plating, which makes it super easy to force trades. Don't forget, especially if you play into engaged supports, having or being able to maintain your bone plating rather than protecting it, makes it very difficult for the enemy to engage into you. They'll have to deal a lot of bonus damage to you just because of your bone plating. Early game it's like 90 damage of just getting blocked, and if they don't play around that pattern and wait it out, you'll have a lot of extra time to do damage to them for free. And a Misfortune can just use a third ability or first ability to proc it and just be happy with it, and it's super easy to do. When it comes to teamfights, all she has to do is use her third ability into her ultimate, and then she'll have high impact. But if there's one thing I suggest to people playing Misfortune, don't overfocus on boots. You have your passive that grants you a lot of bonus movement speed anyway, so you're not really forced to buy boots to maneuver around the map or maneuver around fights. You just need to make sure to not take any damage or use your second ability rather nicely, which you can by utilizing your first ability into your second ability, because the moment you hit your passive, you get resets on your second ability, which means if you cast your second ability, the moment you cast your first ability onto having 2 hits, you'll also have most of the ability refreshed instantly, because you can auto attack again, which is free resets in an instant. Super easy, super powerful, super nice. Next up, if you're truly clueless about the support role and have no idea what you could possibly play, well, I hate to break it to you, it's most likely going to be Yuumi or Lulu. Both are super easy to pilot and super obnoxious to deal with. Yuumi as a champion is a powerful laner, and even if you know little about Yuumi as a champion, you can just slap the enemy on cooldown, and the moment things get a little bit more dicey, you just attach to your closest ally and nobody can hurt you. That is, unless your ally chooses to willingly die. But for laning, you have to think about it in the following way. You can force trades onto the enemy because you have sustain and you have absolute safety. You just have to make sure that you don't get crowd controlled as you get low HP, because that would basically remove the ability of you to attach to somebody and would just net you death. So if you can avoid this and then force trades onto the enemy team, exchanging HP bars, dropping them lower while you are able to attach to your ally, you can just force them to go back in lane. They can't overcommit anymore because they're too low, and they can't risk dying because any point in time you can just detach, get a shield, attach again, and you can poke them with your first ability anyway. And Yuumi has also something like a critical mass that the moment you get, for example, Luden's Echo, your first ability becomes a tactical nuke. You hit an enemy, they lose a majority of their HP bar, and they'll just get pissed. We all hate playing against Yuumi, and I don't really fault you for it, but Yuumi as a champion, especially if you're autofilled, is quite a nice champion to play. The next champion that is also the super of nicest, of bestest, I'll just invent new words for this champion because it's absolutely crazy broken for what you have to input into this champion, is Garen. Garen has one of the easiest laning phases in the game, which primarily consists of auto attack into first ability and then you spin and spin and spin. And skill-wise, the only thing you have to do is use your second ability as damage is incoming to prevent damage and crowd control time on you. That's basically it. And if you're feeling really fancy, you have to drop your ignite onto the enemy champion and use your ult when they're like 50%. Then you'll most of the time just kill them. Oh yeah, and did I mention that if you're just, making a mistake and a little bit low, you can just sit back at your tower, open up Netflix for like 20 seconds, heal up to full life, and then have a shot at it again. Other than this, you also can just recall because home guards are broken and you'll always have value. You're basically one of the biggest damage sponges in the game that will probably tank 3 rotations of 17 different champions and still stand there chillin'. That is Garen as a champion. Super easy, super broken. If you have no clue what to pick him in the Baron lane and enjoy your time. It's surely worth it and you'll get a lot of LP. Similar to what I've just said about Garen, there's another champion that is super easy to pilot and most of the time will net high value without much you have to do. And I'm talking about Malphite. This champion performs exceptionally well into high AD drafts and makes it borderline impossible for the enemy team to kill you. Not only that, you always, at all times of the game, pose a threat for the enemy backline, which is most likely consisting of squishy champions, because the moment you ultimate in, you CC them, you'll slow them, and you'll allow your team to hunt them down. And even if they don't help you, it's very likely that the enemy team will blow heavy cooldowns on you and will not be able to kill you. And if you're let alone with an AD carry, chances are very high that you're just gonna run him down, because there's little an AD carry can do about you as a champion unless he has every single spell available and manages to dodge every single spell as well. But given the skill level in solo queue, this is very unlikely to happen and probably won't. And even then, you are a little pressure sponge. Similar to what I've said before, there are also a few tricks you can abuse with a Malphite. So, the enemy AD carry or enemy champions will most of the time just use their flash to get away the moment they see you move forward, like in a dash animation. So what if you bought Proto Belt, or Rocket Belt or however you want to call it, and then input it in front of the enemy? The moment you do this, they'll be most likely inclined to just immediately or instinctively flash away because they already see you in motion and then they want to avoid certain death. Similar to this, you can use your flash ability to achieve same results, but obviously it's a higher cooldown, so you have to think about this in this way. And sadly, really sadly, sometimes this goes wrong because the enemy champion isn't even paying attention to your champion. It really happens. It's sad as it is. For our last champion here, we have the little toilet paper I've teased in the earlier intro. We have Amumu. Amumu is one of those champions which is super easy to play, and if you ever struggle with the jungle role, you can just play Amumu. If you want to do yourself a favor of removing annoying enemy jungle champions that you cannot deal with, just remove Lee Sins because they're crazy people. Once you have that on lockdown, all you have to do is clear your jungle, and then you can literally flip around objectives. It doesn't mean I recommend doing so, but if you have no clue what to do, pick Amumu, full clear your jungle, focus Herald. The moment you do this, or even if you play around Dragon, it literally doesn't matter, but I still say please go for Herald because it's infinitely better. You still have high impact. The moment the enemy is fully stacked up, you have the time of your life with your burst damage. And next patch you will have even nicer items to utilize this. So maybe Amumu will even become meta with the new changes, and I'm looking forward to it happening. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel and come back for more RiftGuides content.